Okay, so once again, good morning and good day, everyone. So this time, our topic is about research theory. No, so research is about acquiring knowledge and developing understanding, collecting facts and interpreting them to build up a picture of the world around us and even within us. It is fairly obvious then that we should hold a view on what knowledge is and how we can make sense of our surroundings. And these views will be based on the philosophical stance of that we take. No? Despite this, some people maintain that a study of a philosophy of the natural or human sciences is irrelevant to researchers. They remark the study of philosophical consists of learning about how theory after theory has been erected, only to be turned down by the subsequent one. And that it has little bearing on the day-to-day practice of research and only causes confusion. So why should you find it necessary to know something about philosophy as a background to your research? Because everyone is a philosopher. Everyone has a concept of the world. In fact, the alternative of having philosophy is not having no philosophy, but having a bad philosophy. So the unphilosophical person has an unconscious philosophy which they apply in their practice, whether on science or politics or daily life. All philosophical positions and their attendant methodologies explicitly or implicitly hold a view about reality. And this view in turn will determine what can be regarded as legitimate knowledge. Philosophy works by making arguments explicit, and you need to develop sensitivity towards philosophical issues so that you can evaluate research critically. It will help you to discern the underlying and perhaps contentious assumptions upon which research reports are based, even when these are explicit, and thus enable you to judge the appropriateness of the methods that have been employed and the validity of the conclusions reached. Obviously, you will also have to consider this aspect in regards to your own research work. Your research and how you carry it out is deeply influenced by the theory or philosophy that underpins it. There are different ways of going about doing research depending on your assumptions about what actually exists in reality and what we can do know or what we can know, or the metaphysics, and how we can acquire knowledge, or the epistemology. Okay, to give us more details about the topic, let us all welcome our next presenter.
Hello, good day. Hello, good day classmates. Audible naman po ulit ako.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Sige po. Start ko na po yung report ko. So, katulad nga po nung discuss po ni sir is ang i-report ko po is all about research theory. So, first, so research is about acquiring knowledge and developing understanding. Wait lang. And developing understanding, collecting facts, and interpreting them to build up a picture of the world around us. So it is fairly obvious then that we should hold a view of what knowledge is and how we can make sense of our surrounding. So these views will be based on our philosophical stance that we take. All philosophical position and their attendant methodologies explicitly or implicitly hold a view about reality. So these views, in turn, will determine what can be regarded as legitimate knowledge. So philosophy works by making arguments or explicitly. So you need to develop sensitivity towards philosophical issues so that you can evaluate research critically. So it will help you also to discern what underlying and perhaps contentious assumptions upon which research reports are based, even when these are explicitly. So obviously, you will also consider this as aspects with regard to your own research work. your research and how you carry it out, it is also deeply influenced by the theory or philosophy that underpins. So on my topic, uh, we will learn, or after you finish this information or about theory, you will understand first what is theory. So i-define natin to. Second, describe the importance and role of theory in research. Then we will define also the relations of research and theory by discussing inductive and deductive research approaches. And then also we will define then yung those two, which is inductive and deductive reasoning. First, we will define what is theory. So research is a before we will go to the definition of research, we will define first what is research. So it is a very general term of an activity that is involving or finding out in a more or less systematic way things that you did know. So a more academic interpretation is that research involves finding out about things that no one else knew either. So it is about advancing the frontiers of knowledge. So ngayon since na-discuss or kumbaga na intindihan natin kung ano yung kumbaga basic backgrounds ng research, then di-discuss or i-define muna natin what is all about theory. So this definition, ito na yung pinaka mas kinuha kong definition or definition ng theory na mas kumbaga mas maintindihan natin briefly. First, according to Curley, a theory is a statement of concepts and their interrelationship that shows how and or why a phenomenon occurs. Then, also explanation of a phenomenon arrive at through examination and contemplation of the relevant facts. As this is according to Stewart. Then also, it also seeks to describe, explain, and predict reality in sequential order. So in short, this story may be regarded as a set of interrelated concepts or ideas that explain some aspect of the real world. So yung theory is napaka-importante siya in research kasi it's either hini-help neto na ma-define or yung mga concepts ng research natin na makatuklas ng panibagong theory or pwedeng mas ma-explain pa yung current research na gusto natin or current concept na gusto pa natin mas pag-aralan. Then next, what is the importance and role of theory in research? Research requires a sound of theoretical basis and strong methodology. As such, the importance of theory in research. So there are three reasons why theory is important for research. First, it provides a framework for analysis. Then second, it provides an efficient method for field development. And finally, it provides a clear explanation for the pragmatic world. So also, theory is a central element in all the forms of research already examined. Research can build on existing theories, exploring and developing them, which is called theory testing, or it can identify new theories or theory building. So the processes we use to understand and make sense of reality and shaped by the concepts that provide tags or label for the things that constitute our world. Concepts allow us to organize our understanding and communicate this to each other. Theory, therefore, acts as an explanatory framework that provides an understanding about our related sets of concepts. So yun, this theory explains or provides us, napaka-importante siya to provide us framework. So yung mga efficient method na pwede natin ma-develop and it give us a clear explanation sa research natin. Then, there are different ways on of ongoing about research depending on our assumptions about actually exists in reality. So there are two things na tinatawag dito, which is first yung metaphysics, which is explain what we can know, and then other one is epistemology, which is explaining naman on how we can acquire knowledge. First, first we will discuss metaphysics. Metaphysics is concerned with questions such as first, what is to be? Second, who we are. Third, what is knowledge? And then what are things? And last, what is time and space? So ito yung mostly mga concerned questions na matatackle or may encounter natin when we say metaphysics. So on the extreme, meron daw tinatawag na idealism. So it is advocates the reality is all in the mind. So that is everything that exists is in somehow way dependent on the activity on the mind. So more on yung activities na is involving the mind. Next is materialism, that or tinatawag natin yung reductionism, that insists that only physical things and their interaction exists, and that our minds and consciousness are wholly due the active operation of materials. So ayun yung about sa metaphysics. Next naman, magfo-focus tayo sa epistemology. So when we say epistemology is the theory of knowledge, especially about its validation and the methods used. So it also deals with how we know things and what we can regard as acceptable knowledge in a discipline. It is concerned with the reliability of our senses and the power of the mind. As for the methods of acquiring knowledge, there are two basic approaches, which is yung first, empiricism, which is knowledge gained by sensory experience, or yung tinatawag natin na inductive reasoning, which is will be discussed later part. And the second, yung rationalism or the knowledge gained by reasoning, which is yung deductive reasoning naman na tinatawag. So the term empiricism is used in a number of ways, but two stand out. First, it is used to denote a general approach to the study of reality that suggests that only knowledge gained through the experience and the senses is acceptable. In other words, this position means that ideas must be subjected to the rigors of testing before they can be considered knowledge. So more on testing muna before we considered yung ginagawa natin as knowledge. So the second meaning is the term is related to this and refers to a belief that the accumulation of facts is legitimate goal in its own right. To a belief that again, it is the second meaning that is sometimes referred to as naive empiricism. So raising the question of what empiricism is invites the consideration of another question. So insofar as any piece of research is linked to the theory, and then what was the role of the theory? So after this point, we have to tend to write as thought theory is something that guides and influences the collections and analysis of data. So in other words, research is done in order to answer questions posed by theoretical consideration. But an alternative position is view theory as something that occurs after the collection of analysis of some or all of the data associated with project. We begin to see here the significance of second factor in considering the relationship between research and theory. So whether we are referring to deductive and inductive theory. So dito tayo papasok kay inductive and deductive reasoning or inductive deductive approaches. First, we will discuss the inductive reasoning. So inductive reasoning, it starts from the specific observation or sensory experiences and then develops a general conclusion from them. So the simple examples gives us the indication of the line of reasoning. So first, all the giraffe that I have seen repeated observe so all the giraffes that I have seen is it is the repeated observation, so have the very long neck. So ayun yung kumbaga repeated observation na usually nakikita natin dun sa statement na binabanggit. So therefore, I conclude that all giraffes have long necks. So since dun sa first sentence, kumbaga ayun yung repeated observation na nakita ng isang person. So kinoclude tong person na yon. So lahat ng giraffe have long necks. So dan yung example ng inductive reasoning. So an inductive approaches starts by looking at focus of research or the organization, a business problem, or an economic issue, or etc. And through investigation by various research methods, aim to generate theory from the research. So yun yung inductive approaches na tinatawag po natin. Next po, so for inductive reasoning to work, we also need to make careful observation of the specific situation. Katulad ng example kanina, di ba? In-observe niya muna yung lahat ng mga giraffe na nakikita niya, and then to consider possible causal links in that situation in order to produce a reliable idea or theory which relates to other situations too. So ganun yung inductive reasoning when kumbaga to formulate theory. So next naman po is yung deductive reasoning or we call the rationalist approach. So deductive reason begins with general statements or premises, and through logical argument comes to a specific conclusion. Again, a simple example will be provided on how things works. First, all living things will eventually die, which is the general statement or fair premise niya. And then, second, this animal is a living thing. So yung second statement niya, and therefore, this animal will eventually die. So which is the conclusion nung first and second statement. So deductive theory represents the most common view of the nature of the relationship between theory and research. So a deductive approach begins by looking at theory, produces hypothesis from that theory, which is related to the focus of research, and then proceeds to test that theory. So theories are speculative answers to perceived problems and are tested by observation and experiment. So it is possible to confirm the possible truth of the theory through observation, which is supported. Theory can be falsified and totally rejected by making observations which are inconsistent with its statement. So in this way, science is seen to proceed by trial and error. When one theory is rejected, another is proposed and tested again, and thus the fittest theory survive. In order for a theory to be tested, yun nga yung sinasabi, it also expressed as a statement called a hypothesis. The essential nature of a hypothesis is that it must be falsifiable. So this means that must be logically possible to make true observational statements which conflict with the hypothesis and thus can falsify it. However, the process of falsification leads to a devastating results of total rejection of a theory requiring a completely new start. So meron naman din tayong tinatawag na combination of deductive and inductive reasoning, which is called the hypothetical deductive method. So yun nga, combination siya, which is resulting in the to and pro process of first, identification of clarification of a problem, and then developing a hypothesis, which is testable theory or inductively from observation. Next is charting their implication by deductions, and then practically or theoretically testing of the hypothesis, and then rejecting or refining it in the light of results. It is this combination of experience with deductive and inductive reasons which is the foundation of modern scientific research and is commonly referred to as scientific method. It was only by the beginning in 1916 that Popper formulated the idea of hypothetical deductive method, even though it must have been used in practice for almost or for decades before. So that is my report about research theory. And thank you. So these are my references na pinukuhaan ko regarding to my research po.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam. No? So again, this discussion is about basic theory, more on metaphysics and epistemology. No? Sometimes as a researcher, we are not totally giving much more time, no, in understanding this one, but it's important also as part of your research endeavor. No? So a while ago, our presenter mentioned about the two basic approaches, no, the empiricism and the rationalism. No, wherein the empiricism, knowledge gained by sensory experience, no, using inductive, and rationalism, knowledge gained by reasoning, no, using deductive reasoning. Okay, so our presenter discussed also about the induction, no, the deductive reasoning, the deduction, and the hypothesis. No, then the hypothetical deductive method combines inductive and deductive reasoning, no, resulting in the to and pro process. No? So sinabi na rin ng presenter natin, identification or classification of a problem, developing a hypothesis. This will be a testable theory, no, inductively from observation, charting their implications by deduction, practical or theoretical testing of the hypothesis, and rejecting or refining it in the light of the result. So it is this combination of research, which deductive and inductive reasoning, which is the foundation of modern scientific research, and is commonly referred to as a scientific method. No? Of course, there are many problems posed by the complexity of testing theories in real life. So realistic scientific theories consist of combination of statements, each of which relies on assumptions based on the previous theory. So the methods of testing are likewise based on assumptions and influenced by surrounding conditions. Or if the predictions of the theory are not borne out in the results of the test, it could be the underlying premises which are a fault rather than the theory itself. There are certain assumptions that underlie scientific method that relate to a materialist view of metaphysics and positivist view of epistemology. So the assumptions, of course, order, external reality, reliability, parsimony, and generality. However, these assumptions are not accepted by the opposite camp in metaphysics and epistemology. Those with an idealist and relativist point of view insist on the importance of human subjectivity and the social dimension of facts and their meanings. And this clash of viewpoints in unlikely ever to be resolved. A brief review of history will show that this quest for what is reality and what are facts is a constant preoccupation in the inquiry into our relations of existence. So we have, of course, the positivism, relativism, postmodernism, and critical realism. Okay, so of course, research theory is general knowledge held by members of a given group about a social phenomenon, while theoretical framework provides explanation to the problem from the existing works in a particular field of study. No, functionalism, phenomenology, social actions, and recognition theory. So, of course, again, theories such as interactionalism, phenomenology, and critical theory can be used to help design a research question, guide the selection of relevant data, no, interpret the data, and propose explanations, of course, no, and others. In writing a theory, no, we need to jot down the goals of your theory paper clearly and succinctly. No, you need to review the literature, write a hypothesis and assumptions from the research notes, write out in detail, know how you plan to test the theory, compile and organize the findings, and write your theory in a few sentences based on your findings. Actually, so I think that's it for this topic.